Yes, indeed. Who Dat Nation, welcome inside Black and Gold, the final week of the regular season. And we are still talking about that chance to make the playoffs. The Dirty Birds come in to the Saints house Sunday, high noon. It'll be a kickoff in the Caesars Superdome. Jeff and I will be there bright and early for first take, getting ready for a kickoff against a team that no Saints fan likes and should be at least an entertaining rowdy matchup I'm hoping for in the finale, along with some decent football mixed in. We're going to talk a little about Mickey Loomis. We got to chat with him on the Saints Hour, filling in for the voice of the Saints, Mike Haas, some interesting things he had to say. Also, a little bit of news for the Black and Gold. We have a Pro Bowler on the squad. Yes,
you know what that is? Baby. It's the final countdown, baby.
Yeah.
Hopefully there is another week, but we've already talked about that. We talked about that to death. If you don't know what you need to see by now, you might not listen to this podcast regularly. But yeah, Saints still have a chance to make the playoffs. But we're gonna talk about this as if it's the final game until it's not, right? So we'll get into that. But yeah, we're also gonna talk to Scott Kennedy. You can follow him on Twitter at Scout Kennedy. He does a lot of Senior Bowl stuff. He has a Falcons podcast. He's going to give us some insight into what's been happening to the Falcons since we last saw them, because it's gone badly. It's gone very badly.
What's interesting too, he told us his number one viewed video is about Trevor Penning.
Yeah. And we don't have any viewed videos of Trevor Penning.
Exactly. I was like,
3
wow.
Months. So that's going to be something. We'll get into that. And then the final segment, we're going to talk about red zone stats, because the red zone was obviously a major factor in this last Falcons game. So I want to talk about what's happened in the red zone since then and why some of it has worked. Ask Derek Carr about it. So we will get into that. And we'll pick some X factors as we always do. But yeah, as you mentioned there, Rashid Shaheed, is the only Pro Bowler on the Saints roster this year, which is disappointing and also kind of, I think, telling of the state of the current roster in terms of, like, you go back 4 or 5 years, you're talking about double digits at the Pro Bowl. They could barely fit in the group photo. Right. Now Rashid's going to be wandering around there alone. Now they could still get some alternates, obviously, but it's the 16th consecutive year the Saints have had someone at the Pro Bowl. So long that they were still playing a Pro Bowl game back then. Now it's a flag football game and a bunch of stuff, which I think Rashid's going to shine in. Because it's all about athleticism and just running around in shorts. And that's, I don't think you're going to find anyone better. But good for him. The Saints, they find Pro Bowl return guys. They just do it. Deontay Hardy, who was Harris at that point, Pro Bowler as a return specialist. And I think they got it right this year, because in a league where you don't return kicks anymore, like, go back to that Week 17 game and watch Jake Camarda just shank the ball out of bounds because he just did not want to kick to Rashid. He did it multiple times, and then late in the game they finally kicked to him, and he had a nice return. So good for him. He's very deserving. I'm happy for him.
We like to talk about snubs, obviously, a lot. I don't really think anyone deserved it on the offensive side of the ball, but man, I was kind of disappointed to see Paulson Adebo get left off.
Yeah, I think Adebo will end up being an alternate. I think he will end up being there, unless the Saints make the Super Bowl, and then he won't be able to, right?
Man, you got that good stuff this morning.
Just kidding. But yeah, no, I think Adebo, it ends up being a reputation thing at a certain point. It ends up being a market thing at a certain point. But no, he has had a Pro Bowl season, regardless of whether it ends up being called. He ends up being called a Pro Bowler this year. Yeah. Mario is, he got it last year, so I guess he's happy now. But and I think every year DeMario should be in strong consideration. Thomas Morstead didn't make it, which is weird. You'd think he would have made it because he got all those votes, but I don't really understand how the Pro Bowl works anymore. But either way, good on Rashid. You're talking about a UDFA from last year. He didn't even get on the roster until week 6. So that's a pretty big honor for him.
Golf claps for Shaheed for sure. And they're going to need him to hopefully show off those Pro Bowl skills against the Falcons in the finale too.
Yes, and speaking of a guy who was not getting golf claps, we're talking about GM Mickey Loomis. As you mentioned, we talked to Mickey this week. We filled in for Mike Haas on the Saints Hour, and I got a few responses that are just like, well, why weren't you meaner? Why didn't you ask him? I think people need to understand that program is a little different than just sit down interview with somebody, and it's also not our show. So we do have to be a little respectful of, like, I don't want to say anything that Haas is going to have to answer for next week when he comes back.
Right. This isn't hard hitting news. It's called the Saints Hour.
Yes, but I do think there was some interesting answers in that interview, and one of them, I tweeted a handful of them, and the one that I knew when he said it was gonna go ape shit, right? Was people are gonna go wild about it. He talked about Derek Carr's season. He invoked the name of Drew Brees, the great Drew Brees, and it was something. But I do want to play that entire answer for you, so you get an understanding, and we'll talk about it. So let's do that right now.
Thing like fans and media, we really don't know what sometimes players are dealing with. And to see Derek Carr go out there, the performance he had, really had some nice throws, accurate, efficient, and even heard from Dennis Allen after the game talk about how that shoulder injury was something that might have been something bothering him that he's just able to work through, but didn't seem like it was an issue at all last game, obviously.
Look, I think overall Derek's done some really good things this season. And if you look at some of the areas, his rating, his efficiency, there's a lot of really good things that we've done. There's some things that he hasn't done well. And, how he feels each week. Obviously, he had a shoulder injury, early in the season, and that there's no question that bothered him. We didn't handle pressure very well earlier in the season. And I think, in the last 4 or 5 games in particular, our offensive line and our protection has been better. So there's all these variables, all these elements that contribute to the quarterback play. And look, we all look at the quarterback and we look at the head coach, and that's where we want to point blame and oftentimes you give credit, and yet there's just so much more to it than that. But what you said is correct. Derek has had a great game against Tampa. It was really efficient. There still was some meat left on the bone. There's still opportunities that were to be had that maybe would have put that game even further out of reach. And we've had a few things like that. I think this season has been a tale of, we've had quarters and halves and parts of games where you can see what we can be, but it's hard to point to a lot of games and say from beginning to end, this is what we are. And that's not unusual. I mean, this is Derek's first year with us. And if we went back to 2006 and looked at Brees' first season or two with us, you wouldn't say, wow, that guy's going to the Hall of Fame after season 1 or season 2. So, sometimes it takes a while for us to be familiar with him, for him to have a real grasp of the offense in terms of being reactive instead of thinking and then making a play, and getting on the same page with, our staff, our coaches, as well as our players.
Yeah, and I think that point is interesting. And I did want to ask you about that, because you're looking at, year one of DA and Derek Carr together. And as you're evaluating it, how important is it to kind of take a step back and avoid just trying to say, well, this is what it was in 2020 with, year 15 of Sean, or whatever it was with Drew and Sean, versus, this is a new regime, and you have to kind of look at them independently of like, okay, where are we really? How have we improved? What needs to be fixed? Versus getting into that game of, oh, well, this is what Drew and Sean did.
I would say that most of that process comes after the season. I don't like to make evaluations in season because, you're dealing with the emotion of winning and losing each week, and you're dealing with the issues that come up on a daily basis to prepare for the next game. But that'll be a process we go through, and I go through when the season's over. I certainly have a few thoughts and a few things that I think we need to have a discussion about, but that'll all come after the season's over, and hopefully the season won't be over after Sunday.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that, and we'll talk about the Drew Brees comment at length here, but my follow-up was I was trying to get him to kind of elaborate on the whole Drew Brees part of it all. He did not take the rope, and so we have to just talk about what he said there. I tweeted that quote, that the part about year one with Drew in 2006 and whatever. And just for perspective, that tweet, it's obviously gotten a lot of reaction. I think currently it has 128 quote tweets and 10 retweets. So that's usually an indicator of how things are going in terms of their reaction. But I want to talk about the health thing, but we'll get into the Drew Brees part of it first. So the main part, the biggest part of the reaction is like, why would you ever want to compare Drew Brees in 2006 to Derek Carr in 2023? when you look back and you see Drew Brees was the second in the MVP voting that year. The Saints went to the NFC Championship that year. It's like, it's funny because we always talk about 2018. No one ever really talks about the 2006 NFC Championship.
Right.
Like that was honestly one of the more impressive runs in terms of first year head coach, first year quarterback, and the way it went. So I understand why people are reacting to that the way they are. What was your kind of reaction when you kind of heard him say that? Because
I guess to me it was just obviously him trying to bring up the fact of, things don't always start out great, but maybe look where they end up. But yeah, when you try to put Drew Brees in the conversation, you're going to get killed, trying to compare him with Derek Carr. I get that.
Yeah. The funny thing is, like, I guess it's to play devil's advocate to some extent. You have to he's the guy, right? Like you're trying to, who else are you going to compare it to, right? So in the sense that you don't really have an option of saying like, well, this is how the last one went. It's like, what are you going to go back to, like Aaron Brooks or whatever? Like, no, you're going to have to kind of like that has to be part of the discussion. And I think more so when you're looking at it, I think what he should have said, and is like, and I think what he was trying to say more so than saying like, I expect Derek Carr to become a Hall of Famer, which is kind of what it sounds like. It's like, okay, sure, like 2006 went the way it did, but that still wasn't the full form of Drew Brees. Like, you don't look at that season and say this was peak Drew Brees. You look at it and say, wow, he came in and right away he and Sean just clicked and you got it. I think it's more like, the how you kind of perceived that season should be kind of the same way of like, yes, like he defied expectations, but what were the expectations going into that season? Because they weren't go to the NFC Championship, and if he had come in and struggled, I don't think the team would have been like, no, we made a mistake, move on. And I think that's I think it's more just the reality around the offense. And one of the reason I followed up the way I did is because I think that is part of what makes the Derek Carr era so frustrating. Is you were hoping that he would come in and do what Drew did in 2006, and B, you're looking at that run from 2017 through 2020, and being like, well, why isn't this more like that? But I do think like you go back, you can't really compare those two things. But even that said, I do think it was kind of a one. I had one person text me. I was like, Mickey needs to stop doing a radio show because this is like the third or fourth time. All I've done, like I try to be fair. I'm just presenting the quotes. I don't even opine on Twitter in terms of whether I agree with what he said, whatever. I just share the quotes. And this is the third or fourth time that all I've done is share a quote, and it's gone bananas in terms of the reaction. And so yeah, it's funny, but I mean, I think I understand where he was trying to go with that, but I do think it was you got to be careful when you're trying to sell people on the Drew Derek comparison, to say the least.
I will say, and I told you this, off the podcast before. I'm like, I'm not defending Derek Carr. I'm not making any excuses, but I will say this season has not been ideal for him. But he's got a lot of factors with that. You have no run game, and the offensive line has been a mess. So I'm definitely anxious for year two of Derek. But we've heard it before from Mickey too. Like I can't worry about next year right now. We're halfway through this season.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons like I get called a Carr stan, and it's not really that. I think I've been pretty critical of Derek in a lot of instances.
Yeah,
it's just I think that you're bringing a quarterback. And it doesn't seem like it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? Like you can look at it and be realistic about what the expectations should be and what happened. But I do think you should give the guy a fair shot. And I'm not sure that's happened in a lot of the discourse. And, and we can go from there. I don't think he's been as terrible as some people would like to say he has been. And I don't think he has been as good as some of the apologists would say he has been. And I don't think he's been as good as you really want him to be going forward. But I do think in the last 5 games, you have seen him play much better. And, obviously the Panthers game is kind of involved in that. So that drags down the stats a little bit. But even with that game, you're talking about last 5 games, he's 109 of 148 passing, 73% completion percentage, 1,779 yards, which isn't a great number. But it does include that Panthers game where the passing yardage was like 118. Right. So, it's not, that kind of does drag it down a little bit. 11 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a fumble, which was the one that, that weird James Hurst punched it out. And, it's funny. They ran a similar play and he turned the other way. And I wonder if they adjusted that somewhat because they were like, well, we can't let this happen again. But if you ask Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis got to it there, they would point to the health and they would say, he was battling through a shoulder injury. I think that affected him. I don't know I don't know how much truth there is to he would be playing better with if he didn't have the shoulder injury. But it's one of those things. And you mentioned that we don't always know exactly what someone is going through. And to Derek's credit, he's not going to use that as an excuse. He has been asked about it multiple times. He was asked about it this Wednesday when he did his media availability. And so this is what he said on that front.
Oh man,
maybe not without pain. Okay, like I know you guys were all dealing with stuff, but
no, I'm with you. It's just no matter how I answer that, it would seem like an excuse for earlier or something. It's just tough, man. I will say I'm feeling better. Usually at this, we were just laughing, a couple of us, that at this end of the year, you're usually, your body's going like this, and I felt like the last couple of weeks my body's going like this, and makes you realize or wonder how bad was it really, and so I am feeling better, but everyone's also doing the right thing more often, and there's a lot that goes into that. So ever since that Green Bay game, it's been a struggle. I've been honest about that. It's been a struggle for me physically, but the last, I don't know the weeks, but I have felt better, and hopefully that continues because we're going to need it, especially against this team.
So just an aside here, one funny take that I've seen on YouTube a lot is like, wow, he's so uncomfortable. You can tell because he's constantly swaying from side to side.
Well, it's cold out.
Well, so it is funny, but he does do that generally. Like it drives me nuts because I look at these videos and I'm like, can you just stand still? Like you antsy man. But I do think it's funny because as we've gone later in the year, it seems to have gotten more pronounced. It's like, well, why is that? Well, the funny part is if you pan down, dude's out there in shorts.
I'm surprised he's not rocking the sleeveless look, but I guess because it is so cold out.
He's evolved to the point that he puts a jacket on, but he still goes out there in shorts, and it's like, dude, it's like 40 degrees outside. Put pants on. But it is funny because it does seem like he's getting more and more like this as the season has gone on, and I think it's because he's cold. But I do think that's funny. It's like just an example of, you're only getting part of the picture. You're not getting the whole picture. Because if you got the whole picture, you would see a guy standing out in 40 degrees in shorts. And it's like, well, yeah, stop doing that, dummy. But anyway, and I just think, and as you look at it and you see, okay, this team the offense has seemed to be more productive as the season has gone on.
Sure.
Whether you attribute that to health, you attribute that to some changes, some schematic changes, some improvements on the offensive line in terms of the scheme and the plan. I think if you had been getting the Derek Carr of the last 5 games more consistently over the first half of the season, some of this discourse might be different. But at the same time, I wonder if it would be the same, because I think a lot of people just quit on Derek Carr after the first month of the season. And it's funny because it's just like, you can do that and no one's going to stop you from doing that. But you're going to have a really miserable next season if you've already decided that this is a mess and it's irredeemable. But hey, it is what it is. I just kind of see it as, this is going to be a game that I think informs of a lot of your opinions on how this season goes. If he goes out there and balls out against the Falcons and you go into the season with a lot of confidence, the offseason with a lot of confidence or a playoff berth, right? I think that could change some of the narratives. But at the same time, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Either way, I do think the Mickey comment is interesting. The health stuff is interesting. But
Derek brought up that Green Bay game afterwards. That next week against Tampa, I felt like the Saints did a disservice putting Derek in that game.
Yeah, and that's something that I will, I'll critique DA about, but I also will critique Derek because at a certain point you're too proud.
You have to say, I can't do it.
Yeah, and if the health was a factor, then that's not an excuse. That's just an indictment on your decision making in terms of, are you giving your team the best chance to win by going out there and playing hurt? Because being too proud to miss a game isn't helpful. And I think that week 4 game more so than the concussion week. I don't see that as a major factor, but it was the shoulder injury.
Right.
That, you was bad to begin with, and then it got you aggravated it again against the Lions, and you continued to just say, well, I'm playing through, and I'm not going to use it as an excuse. But if that's what's causing the offense to bog down, and it's causing you to play below the level that you think is necessary to win at, that's on you, right? Like you can't go any further than that. And I'm glad to hear he's feeling better now. And it is what it is. But let's going forward. Let's hit on one other quote from Mickey that I think if you go back this time last year, everyone was hating on Tyrann Mathieu. Maybe not this time. Maybe earlier in the season. Remember, everyone was just murdering Tyrann Mathieu left and right.
He's done.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was weird at the time, and I don't think you hear that as much anymore, right? I think people have come around to the idea that it's like, yeah, okay, this is 32-year-old Tyrann Mathieu or whatever he is. What is his age? I'm not even sure, but you're still getting a very, very productive player. And I asked Mickey about building the roster and that sort of thing, and this is what he had to say on that. I mean, one of the things after the game that I thought was interesting, Tyrann said that he was asked to kind of stand up on Saturday and kind of rally the troops, if you will. The DBs really responded, he said, and in the game, I think you saw that play out. And so my question is, as you're building a roster, right, how important is it to you not only have youth, you want to have young guys, you want to have guys that are developing, but you also need the Tyrann Mathieu's of the world, the Demario Davises, guys that have been there, because I think at the end of a season, it's almost always the teams that have those kind of core leaders that seem to be playing their best football at the end of the year. So, I mean, how important do you kind of view that veteran leadership as you're building these rosters every year?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I do. I think that each year, we end up with a Super Bowl winner, right? And I would say in the last, 40 years that very seldom is the Super Bowl winner the team that has the best roster. It's the best team. And you have the best team when you have great player leadership, and when you have guys that recognize, veteran players that recognize what's important and can keep their team on that path, keep them focused and on that path, doing the right things when no one's looking, preparing the right way each week. And it's just critical. I know that in the best teams that we've had over the years, we had great veteran leadership. In that 06 to 2012 run, it was Brees and it was Vilma and Will Smith and Malcolm Jenkins and a number of guys that I'm not even naming. Jabari Greer comes to mind. So we just had guys that understood what the goal was, what the focus is, and how to keep our team and their position group in line and focused to that goal.
I think that's important to just kind of realize, because I think every year it's really tempting to be like, well, just go young. You're bringing a bunch of young guys, let them play, let them develop. But you're going to look at this roster and you're going to say, well, why did they build it this way? Why did they put so much emphasis on bringing in a guy like Tyrann Mathieu, on keeping a guy like Demario Davis in such a big role, and a Cam Jordan even, and I think you look at it and you say, you had some luxuries with Drew in terms of the entrenched leadership that was just understood with Drew for so long, that you probably could have gotten younger, right? You saw the offense be a lot of lesser known players. You didn't go with veterans as often at the wide receiver spots, at the tight end, and I think that now that you've moved on from Drew, that becomes a much more difficult equation to kind of find the result that you need, right? And that's why I think it's a much more complicated thing than just saying, well, we want to fix the salary cap, so you're going to move on from veteran A, veteran B, and go to these young players. Because I think having that veteran leadership next to a young player that you expect to be develop into a Pro Bowler, or an elite player down the line, or even just a quality starter, I think that's undervalued. And a guy like Tyrann, that's one of the reasons that I looked at him last year and I'm like, I think you're overreacting to what you expected out of Tyrann versus what you're getting out of Tyrann, because what you're not seeing is everything behind the scenes and keeping this team all kind of rowing in the right direction. And, this is like that week 17 game, right? I think it'd be easy to look at and say, well, this is a good team that played well. But I also think you look at it and you say, like, this is that is a game where the leadership on the roster helped keep everything kind of glued, right? And keep everyone pointed in the right direction. And that's why you saw the result you did. So I just thought that was interesting. And I think it's a point that should be remembered as you go forward and you're trying to figure out, if you're trying to guess some of the decision making that goes on, right? If you're trying to assume you know what they're going to do, remember that leadership is a huge part of it.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously some of the fans last year, you hearing getting loud about, Tyrann Mathieu in this defense. And it blew my mind too, just because how long, people were clamoring for LSU players, and they finally, bring one in, and now it's like, oh, of course, well, he's washed up now. Why do we even have him? I agree though too. I think that what Tyrann brings to the locker room, immense for this team. Every guy on that defensive squad looks for up to him, young and old, because of what he's accomplished, and
Yeah,
the way he's able to speak and address the guys too.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, it's important. And so I thought that was a good answer. And if you want more from that interview, you talked about Zach Bond, Juwan Johnson, Alontae Taylor, a lot of that stuff. I thought the Zach Bond answer was interesting, but that's probably something we can get into as we go forward here, because it's going to be interesting to see A, if they bring him back, and B, if he draws interest based on what you've seen in terms of a team that he fits better, right? Because he's an outside linebacker on a 4. He's a 3-4 outside linebacker who's played on a 4-3 defense. Let's just be real. And a situational pass rusher is great to have, but how much can you afford to pay that guy, right? And what helps for Zach is that he is an elite, a core special teamer. And so you probably would be willing to pay a little bit more for that guy because you can pull from the special teams budget and the pass rush budget when you're trying to balance that as the season goes on. But if I'm Zach, I'm like, okay, if I go somewhere else that has a scheme that fits me better, I could be not even the money. I actually think it's more just if I'm a guy who's looking for an opportunity to be a 3-down linebacker or as an outside linebacker, wouldn't like the Panthers even, right? Like they run a 3-4 scheme, or you need that guy on the outside who can be that rusher. I don't know. But that's what it was, right? Like the Saints drafted Zach Bond with the vision of converting him to an off-the-ball linebacker. It did not go the way they intended. It just didn't. It never really materialized. And what you've been able to do this year is get him more involved in the pass rush. And my criticism is that you didn't do that earlier, because I think anyone who's been paying attention to what Zach Bond did in college and what his skill set is can tell you like that wasn't working. What you're trying to do wasn't working, and a Sam linebacker is not really the value that you're looking for out of a 3rd-round draft pick. And like you saw, they gave that job to Nephi Sewell, right? Like who had played well, but it's like that's kind of you don't need that premier player there. And so but I do think that as this kind of the defense has kind of found a way to be more effective as the season has gone on, it has been in large part because Zach Bond has been a very big addition to that pass rush on 3rd and in 3rd and long situations. So yeah, but it like that's. If people ask, like, why did it take so long? It's because they were trying something that didn't work.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what kind of market he, might have. Certainly teams that were looking at him for the draft and missed out on Bond might come sniffing around again, considering I don't expect it to be a huge payday, not even close to even like what a Caden Ellis got this offseason from Atlanta.
No, but the question isn't necessarily how big is the payday, it's how is it within the framework of what the Saints would be willing to pay a guy who is a special teamer in a situational pass rusher. But again, if he was only a special teamer, that would be one thing, because you can get the kind of pass rush game out of him. Maybe that changes it. But all right, let's wrap up that segment. Again, if you want that full interview, it's on WWL.com. You can find it on my Twitter account at Jeff_Nowak. This is Inside Black and Gold. We're going to come back with Scott Kennedy at Scout Kennedy on Twitter. You can also find him on YouTube at youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. We're going to talk to him about the Falcons, why they suck, all that good stuff. I can assure you that Falcons fans are just as frustrated with their situation as Saints fans are. And, they're also calling for a head coach's head. And, maybe the Saints can give them that reward that they so desperately would like, or at least seems like a lot of them would. But All right, this is going to wrap up this segment, Inside Black and Gold. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Nowak. You can follow Steve Geller at Steve Geller WWL. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. Who dat? We will be right back. And we're back here on Inside Black and Gold, getting ready for Week 18, the grudge match. Saints 8-8, Falcons 7-9, just as everyone predicted all season long. And no, that's not what happened. In reality, these two fan bases are just spending every week getting madder and madder at the head coach, at the quarterback, at whatever. And so we're going to get into it. The Falcons have a different quarterback this time, at least I assume they will, than the last time the Saints faced them. We're going to get into that with Scott Kennedy, Falcons podcaster, but he gets into just about everything. So make sure to go check out his YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. A lot of great Senior Bowl content on there, which means half the Saints roster is probably on there somewhere. Right. But let's get into it. You know, this is a Falcon squad, and I think if you lost track of the Falcons after that Week 12 game, you would have assumed it was like, oh man, these guys are in control of the division. They look like they're heading the right track, and the Saints are going straight down into the muck. Well, you look back and it's like, wow, they lost to the Panthers, they lost to the Bears. What happened? You know, what's going on with this team? Because it's it's funny because you look at it 7-9, they still have a chance to win the division. But anytime you're looking at it and saying we can win the division with a losing record, yay, it's kind of tough, right?
Well, it feels like very similar to the first time these two teams played, where everybody's kind of going, okay, both of these teams are underachieving. Neither team's really going to be happy coming out of this with a win. How long is that going to last? It's like, okay, you win. Yeah, but we still suck. And basically what kind of happens is the road happens to this team. You know, they've been pretty good at home, but then you take them on the road and they're 2-6. And it's not even a good 2-6, like where you can start seeing, if there's a good 2-6, where you can start saying, okay, I see the progress in this team. I mean, like you said, you're talking about losing to the Panthers. Your 2 wins. You won the Jets and the Buccaneers. Well, who doesn't win in Tampa in the division? I mean, come on, that's easy to do, right? No, I'm just teasing. But the Jets game was a travesty of a game in the bad weather up there. I think that one was 9-6. It set offensive football back 10 years. And it's just this team has absolutely zero consistency. So I would say some of the consistency would be they're okay at home. They're, I'm going to say relegation fodder for soccer fans out there, but they're I'm a number 1 pick overall type of play on the road, including if you watch that Panthers game, you'd be like, this is a 3-14 team.
When you look at what Arthur Smith has done with this squad, what is the feeling, I guess, from fans and just overall on his status going forward? And even just curious about GM Terry Fontenot, since he's got a lot of New Orleans ties.
Right. I think from a fan's point of view, you can't get 2 people to agree on anything. I think it's almost unanimous. With Falcons fans, they want Arthur Smith gone. And I was willing to preach patience the last 2 years with the dead cap number, the way the roster was built. And I think he actually did a pretty good job getting 7 wins in each of the last 2 seasons with a threadbare roster and $90 million in dead cap money. So you go into this season and you ask, can he do more than just get a scrappy bunch of 1-year contract guys that have been cast off from the Titans and Bears to go and play competitive football and win 7 games? You spend $100 million on the defensive side of the ball. You've got a lot of talent on offense. And the answer to that this year was no. No, you can't. You're staring in the face of a 3rd consecutive 7-10 season. And there's lots of reasons we can get into for that from a personnel standpoint too.
Yeah, and the personnel is kind of interesting, but I guess we could start with the quarterback. Taylor Heinicke, it's been just a revolving door between Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heinicke. It kind of feels like that Simpsons gif where he walks in, hangs up his coat, turns back around, walks back out, right? And so, Desmond Ridder, first question, is the Desmond Ridder experience done? Is, obviously year 2, it's not a good sign when you get benched twice in the same season for the same guy who no one is looking at and saying, well, that's the future, right? It's not like he's a rookie you drafted where it's like, okay, he's going to develop. This is a guy who who he is. He's Gardner Minshew light, right? And but you've been going back to him. And so what should the Saints expect in Taylor Heinicke? and kind of where are they in this kind of QB carousel?
If it was like it was last week, then if you put any kind of pressure on him, then you can expect nothing on the road. He was awful against the Bears last week, just dreadful. When he played earlier, he moved the ball up and down the field fairly well, and that's kind of what you expect. I've watched Taylor Heineke come into Atlanta, beat the Falcons as a gunslinger mentality. You know, when he was with the Washington football team, Commanders, Redskins, whoever you want to call him at the time. You know, you think of him as, okay, maybe he's a little loosey-goosey with the ball a little bit, but he's going to take some shots and move. And then it might have, I don't remember which game it was, but he had like an average depth of target at one point of like 0.7 yards on 20. It's like, dude, now is this Taylor Heineke? Because he's not as bad as Arthur Smith has made him look. And Arthur Smith is not as bad as Ritter and Heineke have made him look. So with a combination of all of them, it's just been some awful offensive football. This team was 15th in scoring last year. You know, that surprises a lot of people. You think 15th, really? Yeah, they actually were. Well, now you've got 3 top 10 skill players picked: Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. You've got arguably the best offensive lineman in football in Chris Lindstrom. I mean, that's going to sound crazy to people that don't know the Falcons, which is pretty much everybody. But Chris Lindstrom has been really, really good. You've got a first-round, second-year contract guy at right tackle. You got PFF top 5 center at center, top 5 guy at center. Left guard, you spent a second-round pick at left guard. Jake Matthews is Mr. Steady. And I got worse. I put a running back, a win-now type of move with number 8, and they've gotten worse, and not just by a little bit, a lot worse. Man, if there was an offensive coordinator on this team who wasn't the head coach, he'd be calling for his head. There wouldn't be any question about it. This guy would be fired. So it's sometimes if some Falcons fans, well, if he gets his quarterback, I hear that too much because he has personnel control on this team too. Arthur Smith does. Him and Terry Fontenot work together. They had a chance to get their quarterback. They decided not to. They went with a tight end at number 4. They've had chances. They've had 3 years, and you decide to go in with Taylor Heineke and Desmond Ritter. That's on you. That is not an excuse.
Obviously, the last meeting against these two teams, man, the Atlanta Falcons sure looked like they were world beaters in the run game. Just up and down the Saints, no matter who was in. Even Desmond Ritter, I think, had 30-some-odd yards on the day. It was like 228 total rushing. I'm guessing the plan coming into this matchup will try to be to run up and down the Saints again.
You'd think. You'd think, but that never, come out with against the Bears and run a flea flicker, and it's so predictable. And that's the problem because you've got Bijan Robinson, who is a talent, and he's going to finish with close to 1,500 yards from scrimmage. So you can't say there's that narrative out there that he's been misused. Well, he's done pretty well. Tyler Algier is a beast. You've seen him a few times now, and he's an animal. And Cordell Patterson, you don't want to see him when your legs are tired. The problem is that it's been so predictable. Okay, Bijan's on the game. They're running outside. Here comes Tyler. They're running inside. Here comes Cordell. They're running inside again. Bijan Robinson is out in a pass route. Well, they're going to throw it to him because they don't throw the ball downfield. So it's been super predictable to try and watch this. And if you commit numbers to stop the running game, they haven't been able to beat you with passing the ball at all. So stop this team from running. And again, the identity of this team is what you saw against the Saints. That's what it's supposed to be. Did you know that the Falcons, if you look at the DVOA and those type of efficiency numbers, have the 28th rated rushing attack in the NFL? And this is your bread and butter, Arthur Smith?
Man.
Dude, you're gone. You got to be gone.
Sorry. Yeah, and I think, and I talk about the Giants a lot because I just know the Giants in terms of, what, and I just feel like this Falcons team is kind of in that arc of, you don't get the luxury of saying, well, we're building when you're taking a running back in the top 10. No. You don't do that unless you feel like you are going to win, because running back careers, we've seen it. We've seen this whole narrative of teams don't want to pay running backs once they get past the age of 26, 27. And so you're spending, you only get so many years. And Saquon Barkley, he's on the fringe of being out of his prime, and the Giants were never competitive. And that's why the pick didn't make sense then. That's why the pick doesn't make sense now. And I feel like, as you look at the Falcons from like a broader view, I think that has to be one of the bigger frustrations is like when you operate as a team that expects to win now, and the Saints are in a similar boat. I just think they haven't made that running back pick that, people would probably prefer that they were a little more aggressive in terms of how they go after skill position players. But that's another conversation entirely. But I just feel like that has to be very frustrating when it's like you keep, top 10 tight end, right? Like I think wide receiver you can get on board with a little bit more because, you need wide receivers in this league. But then you look around the NFL and it seems like all the first round tight ends are playing for teams that didn't draft them, right? And so how has that kind of gone? Because I think more than anything else, that has to be, and that shortens the leash of any head coach is you don't see the plan of like, yeah, we're building this, we're building this. It's like, we're trying to win and you're failing.
Well, like you said, it's a win now move. It drove me crazy in 2021 when the Falcons drafted Kyle Pitts and the national media start saying it's a win now move.
Rudolph,
joking?
Not Rudolph. Unicorn. Unicorn is the word.
You got a 36-year-old quarterback behind a non-existent offensive line and a defense that can't stop anything. And it's a win now move. Are you joking? Instead, it's played out exactly like I've talked about. You're going into year 4 of his rookie deal, and you're not any farther ahead, and you don't know who the hell your quarterback is. That's a wasted pick. It's absolutely a wasted pick, and Kyle Pitts is starting to catch some flack for it. But you go back to Bijan, yeah, that's a win now move. And it made it worse because you know who went right after that? University of Georgia defensive tackle phenom Jalen Carter.
Mm-hmm.
There's more Georgia fans in this state of Georgia than there are Atlanta Falcons fans. And Georgia fans are pissed. And there's some crossover there. And if you are a Georgia fan and an Atlanta Falcons fan, you're ready to do away with the whole administration right there. We're like, okay, we're gonna be Philadelphia Eagles fans.
Right.
Looking at the defensive side of the Falcons, I think that's been one of their brighter spots this year. How would you rate defensive coordinator Ryan Nielsen year 1? I know they'd like more takeaways, obviously, on the year, but overall they've been holding offenses pretty well.
We kind of passed over when you got me talking about Arthur Smith and the draft, and you asked about Terry Fontenot. I didn't say a whole lot there. So this is a good chance to bring that back. Terry Fontenot gets more of a pass because other than the quarterback position, they've done pretty well in team building. If you look at, is this team, if I'm the general manager, is this team better off after 3 years than they were when you took over? The answer is by far yes. The roster's in good shape. The problem is the results on the field. Okay, well, that's why your coach is going to be in trouble. Couple former Saints, when you talk about Ryan Nielsen, has done a very good job. And if they do away with Arthur Smith, I expect him to actually get a head coaching interview with the Falcons. I was ready to leave Arthur Smith in Arizona when they lost to the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray's first start in over a year and make Ryan Nielsen the interim head coach just to see what happens. And if he goes on a run, help give him the job. But they hit on their free agents. They spent a lot of money on the defensive side of the ball. David Onyemata, former Saint, has been good. Caden Ellis, who they really didn't let him do what they got him for, which is to pressure the passer because they lost their other inside linebacker within the first 2-3 weeks of the season. And Caden Ellis had to play more traditional linebacker as opposed to, edge and coming off as a pass rusher. But he's been really good. He's starting to make plays behind the line of scrimmage, sideline to sideline. Jesse Bates made his first Pro Bowl, big money, another big money guy. And he has a pretty good chance to go first team All-Pro this year. He's got some of those highlight plays to go with it that you need, the big money contract, the stats and the splash plays that you need if you're playing for a team like the Falcons to make All-Pro. Calais Campbell has been very good, another guy who they brought in. Bud Dupree has done a job for cheap. So the defense has been really good. They really are still missing that number one pass rusher. They're missing that guy to come in and put pressure on it. And that said, they still almost doubled their sacks from last year.
Yeah, and you kind of alluded to this, and when you look at the Falcons season, it's the funny thing is the Saints season is very distinct in that they've lost to the good teams, but they've beaten the bad teams. They have beaten the non-playoff teams. You look at the Falcons, and they have losses to the Commanders, the Titans, the Cardinals, the Panthers, the Bears. Even they're already eliminated. Like a bulk of their losses have come to teams that weren't really in contention for the postseason, and I'm sure that had to be as frustrating as anything. But I guess so my question is, when things have gone right, how have they won games? And when things have gone wrong, how have they lost games? And what team do you expect to see on Sunday at the Superdome?
It's pretty easy. And again, look at those games. Other than the Commanders, all those other games were on the road. But when they've gone right, they've run the ball and won the turnover battle. When they've gone wrong, guess what? It's been the other way around. They couldn't run the ball, and they've lost a turnover battle. So a lot of those early ones, why isn't Desmond Ridder in there? Desmond Ridder's been a turnover machine. So he gets a 4-game sample size last year, and he goes 2-2, didn't turn the ball over once. Like, okay, that's really all this team needs is just don't screw it up. The schedule, because your schedule is just as bad. The schedule is atrocious. This might be the easiest Falcons schedule in the history of the Falcons scheduling. And I don't say that to be hyperbolic with hyperbole. It's true.
Yeah, we've heard that same thing with the Saints schedule, right?
Bobby Hebert has said that exact same sentence at least 24 times this year.
I mean, you look, it's like, okay, we're going to play this team. And I think their first 4 games, the starters had a combined, like, it was Jared Goff, then the other 3 guys had 1 start among them.
Yep.
It might have been 2 because I think the Commanders were in there too. Was their 4th game? So it may have been 1 start. It was Bryce Young to start. Then it was Jordan Love. Which, to be fair, those were both at home and they won those 2 games. But then the Commanders and Sam Howell, and it's just. But they go on the road and they start turning the ball over, and they can't run the ball. So if that happens, and who do I expect to see? I expect to see the road team that I've seen from the Atlanta Falcons. And if the New Orleans Saints show up with any kind of passion at all, they should be able to handle this team. I mean, the Saints have played pretty good defense most of the year. The Falcons ran through them that day. The Falcons, when they're on, are capable of run-throughing anybody. That's what's so frustrating. I have a feeling Saints fans felt that way watching that game against the Buccaneers last week. They're like, yes, this is what we want to see. And where'd that pass rush come from? I mean, y'all were in the backfield the whole game against Baker Mayfield, and it seems like that's been missing a lot of the season.
Correct. That assessment is correct. Steve, you have anything else?
No, just you mentioned is like wondering what to expect from this Falcon squad. Obviously, like you said, going into this matchup, I know the fan base. Do we expect a lot to be traveling to New Orleans for this game? I don't really think so. They don't even show up in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium over there.
No, I can get into that too. And when you go PSLs in Atlanta, the Atlanta sports fan will not be gouged. And when Arthur Blank first came in, he made all the cheap seats cheap.
Yeah.
And they've been sold out. They sold out ever since he came in. But when they went into the Benz, they upped the prices big time.
Wow. Okay.
So the whole lower bowl is all corporate seating, basically. They price the fans out of there. So when you're not playing very well, the people with the company tickets aren't showing up.
Right.
So the whole lower bowl's empty. So that's a mistake. The Atlanta sports, and we got other things to do. We're not gonna pay $500 for a freaking ticket to go watch the Falcons. Sorry,
especially not this Falcons.
Team, so right? that's not gonna happen when you're playing like this. So will they travel? No. Most Falcons fans in the moment, you will say, "No, I don't want to lose to the Saints. I don't want to lose the Saints." Your heart takes over, and you say, "Okay, I want to win this game." If they are to lose this game, and it is the final kick to get Arthur Smith out, you'll get thank you notes. You'll get on their Christmas lists where Falcons fans will send you a note and say, "Thank you, New Orleans Saints. We don't like you, but by God, we had to get this guy out of here. If you're smart, you'll let us win this game and keep this bozo here for another year."
It's so funny going around the NFC South and hearing like
a
the
lot of
exact same thing about every head coach. It feels like everyone's like, man, I want the Panthers to blow out the Bucs because I want Todd Bowles fired. Frank Reich already is out of there. I've heard from Saints fans who are like, man, I'm actually mad that the Saints are gonna ruin their draft pick, and it makes it so you can't really fire your coach if you finish 9-8 in year 2. It's just not a situation. And obviously you're saying the same thing about it. It's just so funny, and everyone in the NFC South is in the same boat. I almost think that helps protect the coaches in the sense of it when you don't want to be looking for a head coach in a season where everyone's looking for a head coach. But
I think 9-8 and you're probably safe. You're like, okay, we're showing some of the right direction. You don't feel that way because again, you look at the schedule. Tampa Bay actually played some decent ball this year until the Saints. I think Bowles will be safe, but I think the last time the Falcons and Saints played, I said the entire NFC South could have new coaches, all of them. I'm like, if you back your way into a division title at 8-9 and then get blown out in the first round of the playoffs, is that headed in the right direction to you? Or is that just circumstance where if you were any good at all, you could have gone 13-4 and then gotten blown out in the first round of the playoffs? I mean, you could have a 13-4 team and still not be any good with this schedule. It's ridiculous.
That's called the Vikings in 2022. But all right, that's going to wrap it up here. Thanks so much. Scott Kennedy, Falcons podcast. You can check him out on YouTube at youtube.com/Scott Kennedy. And this is confusing, but you can also find him on Twitter at Scout Kennedy. He just has a lot of fun with that name. He's just changing letters and doing it all.
I worked for scout.com for 15 years, so it made sense. I was director of scouting at scout.com for 15 years, and people would introduce me on the radio. So I'd like to introduce Scout. Oh, Scott. Dude, just it works.
Yeah, you'll find it.
I'm not hard to find.
Gotcha. Well, Scott, thanks so much. Obviously, Saints Falcons this weekend. It's gonna be interesting. Whether it's firing coaches, winning the division, winning and losing anyway. We'll see. But thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks again to Scott Kennedy for coming on. Yeah, again, like I said, I just think it's hilarious that, you go around the NFC South and every single fan base is like in flames and like, man, this couldn't be worse. And then you go over there and they're like, man, this couldn't be worse. And then you go over there and like, man, this couldn't be worse. And, you get to the Bucks and they're like, some of them are like, yeah, this could have been worse, but it still sucks. And what's going to be funny, and this has nothing to do with Falcons, is when if the Bucks do lose to the Panthers, do you fire Todd Bowles and cut Baker Mayfield, the guy all this positive momentum? But that's I want to see it happen just because I like to watch things burn, and that would be hilarious. Like the Joker walking away from the hospital, kind of like. But yeah, the Saints Falcons. It's I called last week a mid-off. This is also a mid-off. The entire NFC South has been a mid-off all season, and it's gonna be something.
Yeah, and the one thing though, obviously, I think Saints fans will be united on the front of they don't want to lose to freaking Atlanta, even with maybe the notion of maybe there's still a chance Dennis Allen could get fired. I still think, man, I'd rather beat the Dirty Birds. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that Dennis Allen is getting fired regardless of what happens this week. I think, if you had lost both of these games, then that conversation might be different. But the performance last week alone is going to be enough, I think, when you get to the end of the season. And but obviously, it's not going to, whatever leash you're going to give him next year is going to be affected by this game. And, the argument is like, oh, if you lose, you could protect a better draft pick. And if you win, even if you might still not make the playoffs and you would get a worse pick, and that's fair, but no one on the team is looking at it that way. So, it's all theoretical. But yeah, I think it's you shouldn't go into that building rooting for a loss. I mean, I think that should be a rule within Saints fans. It's like, I don't care what the records are. I don't care what benefit you would get. You do not want to lose to the Falcons. You don't. You just don't. You don't want to get swept by the Falcons.
If you want the Falcons to win the game, please stay home. I don't want you in the dome.
Yeah. I mean, you should never. I don't care what the situation is. You should never be rooting for the Falcons to win a game.
Amen to that.
It's just, that's day one stuff. But all right, let's wrap up this segment. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about red zone stats. We've gotten into it, but because this is the game, this is the Week 12 game was the ultimate red zone failure game. I think it's worth diving back into what's happened since then. I talked to Derek Carr about it. We heard from Dennis Allen. He gave some insight. So we're going to get into that, and we're going to pick some X factors heading into Week 18. This is potentially the last time we will pick X factors, so we'll be very sentimental about it. Not really, but yeah. This is Inside Black and Gold. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. Good times have been had by all. We will be right back. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. One more segment here. We're going to get into, some red zone stats, some thoughts on, what's changed since the Saints and Falcons met up last time. Obviously, we talked about the quarterback with Scott, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Saints handle Taylor Heineke. The good news is they have some, they're going to scout him this year. They've also played him right? Back in 2021, the Saints faced the Commanders. They were the Washington football team at that point. And, they have some familiarity with how he likes to play and how he would operate against this same scheme that the Saints are still running. And I think the Saints were pretty pleased with how they handled him that day. That was a funny game because if you recall, so that was a Jameis Winston game. I know Paulson Debo got an interception on the goal line in that game, but they also converted a Hail Mary to Marquez Callaway right before the half in that game. That was in Washington. But one thing that we're going to talk more about the Week 12 matchup. And the thing that happened in that game that forced some changes. Like the Saints changed how they were operating based on how that Week 12 game went, and it was because of the red zone. And that was a game we talked it to death. 0 for 5 in the red zone with 2 turnovers.
Right.
You attempted 6 field goals, you made 5 of them, and you were still in the game. And that's one of the games you look at and be like, man, the Falcons really took it to the Saints at the end. And it was like, yeah, but if you had converted on even one of those red zone trips, that would have been a different game. And so, yeah, I think that's something that we're going to talk a bit more about here. But yeah, what are you kind of looking at from that game?
It was just abysmal to see them gashing the Saints for yardage in the run game, especially. It didn't matter if it was Bijan, Algier, Patterson, and even Ritter at the time. I had mentioned with Scott when we talked to him, he didn't have a ton of yardage, but with 30 some odd yards, and they always seem to be those untimely runs from the quarterback that ends up picking up a 3rd and long or something, and you convert the first down. But just overall, I just remember watching that game and thinking, why how is this team consistently getting gashed on the ground?
Well, I mean, the Falcons do that. That's part of that's their deal, right?
But it hasn't worked, except it seemed to work to a T that game, obviously.
Well, I mean, I think they've run for a lot of yards all season long. It just hasn't always been as effective in terms of winning games. But that's the thing about the Falcons. They're going to stick to the run. They're not going to abandon it ever. One thing that the thing that I'm afraid of happening in this game is, I think you're going to get Taylor Heineke to start. And so what happens if 3 drives go by and he throws an interception or the Saints defense is shutting him down, and then they just switch to Desmond Ritter mid-game and the Saints aren't prepared for that, and then he just runs wild. That's what I'm worried is going to happen in this game. Because I actually, just the matchup of Desmond Ritter against the Saints, and I think if the Falcons weren't just if they hadn't already benched Desmond and brought him back and benched him again, I would think this would be a game that you go back to Desmond, because I think he provides a matchup against the Saints defense that Taylor does not.
Right.
And
struggled with it. It.
Yeah. And so I worry that, he's going to come in mid game and he's going to run wild and we're like, again, it happened again. But we'll have to see. And hopefully either way, the Saints defense can do what they did, because they've held up against the run pretty well over the last, other than the Rams game. Like you saw the games they have struggled in, it's been the games that they not only have not stopped the run, but they've been gashed on 1st and 2nd down. And it sets up easy 3rd down opportunities. And sets up situations where you can't get a guy like Zach Bond on the field in 3rd and 3, because it's just, he's not a run downs guy. And so, but getting back to what we came in talking about, right? So 0 for 5 in the red zone. One thing that, I find interesting, and Dennis Allen talked about this on the coaches show this week, is it's not just that they've been more effective in the red zone. It's that they have changed up their approach a bit in terms of how they're operating and trying to get down closer, as opposed to, settling for shots from the high red zone, right? From the 15, from the 18. And this is, I asked Derek Carr about that on Wednesday, and this is what he had to say. He mentioned, one of the things they noticed that I was okay, getting from the 25 to the 10 was a big factor in being more efficient. Is that something like a coaching point that you've had to kind of look at and say, okay, I can adjust some of the things that I'm doing to, because it seems like, I think 11 of the last 13, they've all come inside the 10-yard line, and obviously that's worked out for you.
Yeah, it has worked out. And I think, honestly, I really believe, man, the biggest thing that we've gotten better at is we're not hurting ourselves with penalties. When we would get in that fringe area, and then you get whatever the penalty is, we get an intentional grounding, a holding, an offense, or whatever. that's really hard to make up those yards as you get tighter, you know. And so I think that's been an improvement for us. And yeah, I mean, the closer you get, the easier it is. It's going to be percentage-wise to score in our league. And so, you know, you try your best in decision-making and all those things that, you know, way out here, you don't always have to throw it in. You like to throw them in from there, but you can also, you know, take a route that gets you inside the 10 and keep playing the game. And so there's a lot of that definitely from depending on the play and the situation that comes on, you know, my plate for sure.
You know, the funny thing about that clip, if you watched it, is he's like pointing and you're like, what the hell are you pointing at? Well, the way they do interviews at the facility, the practice field is right there. So he's actually pointing at the yardages, but it looks weird when you don't have the context of that. You know, so yeah, so the funny thing to me, and I always find this odd, is like we value a 19-yard touchdown more than we value a 21-yard touchdown. Why? I don't know, but it's just, that's technically the red zone. So you get it. The Saints are 11 of their last 13 in terms of touchdowns in the red zone. It's like 85%. I imagine that's number one in the NFL. I'm not even going to bother checking. Their red zone per TD percentage on the season is up to about 58%. So they were in 28th in the league at a certain point. I think after week 12, they've now climbed up to like 18th or 17th, right? So, you know, they were that bad in the beginning of the season that even with this run, they're still only a little over 50%, right? But again, like I mentioned in that clip, 11 of those 11 touchdowns have come inside the 10-yard line. The two drives that ended in a field goal attempt, but the final play was run from the 10 or the 11, right? And so it's different. He also mentioned the penalties, and yes, there hasn't been a single penalty on any of those drives to make things more difficult. And yes, that is a factor. But you know what DA said this week is, you know, they kind of pinpointed this issue of like, when you get inside the 25, the goal doesn't have to be to score a touchdown. The goal should be get closer, make life easier on yourself. And that's really what they've done, you know. And the funny thing is, again, like I said, if you push it out to the 25, so they're 11 of 13 in the red zone, but they're also 13 of 16 inside the 25, because you've had a 20-something yard touchdown to Juwan Johnson, a 20-something yard touchdown to Taysom Hill on similar plays. And I just think I do think it's kind of interesting when you break that all down. But yeah, I just think when you look at how things went in that game compared to how things look in this game, I do think that that's been a huge factor in why this offense has seemed more efficient. And I am curious, as you get into this game, how you operate in that regard and how you kind of change things up. But I think that is something that, as I look at like, okay, why will this game go differently than that game did? I just think you're seeing an approach that's generally worked.
No, you're bringing the stuff from last game too, and I'm definitely afraid to see what happens. First time this, you know, Saints may go down into the red zone area. God forbid they go 0 for 1, and you know those boo birds are going to be coming out right away.
Yeah, it is curious. It is curious because like they've only failed on 2 red zone trips, but the one that happened at home was the first drive against the Panthers, and we did hear boos. And Blake Griffey missed that field goal attempt. That was that very short field goal attempt.
Right, drives another dagger into it.
Yeah, but yeah. I mean, I just think, you know, it's all you can ask a team to do is improve, right? And to look at the things that didn't work and get better. You know, right. It's like you can't just cut the roster. You can't change the entire scheme every week. All you can do is look at the things that did not go right and fix them. And so when you see a team do that, you know, in this is a major fault. This was I had a podcast where I went off on, you know, why, like, they needed to change things up. They needed to adjust. They needed to look this in the face and admit what it is, which is struggling in the red zone. And your quarterback is one of the worst red zone quarterbacks in the league. And so, you know, if you're looking for positives, you can look at that and say that is a positive. That was a positive development. You would have loved for it to not take 13 weeks. But you got there. And so, you know, I kind of look at that in a game where you don't know what you're going to get from the run game because Alvin's hurt and, you know, probably won't play. That efficiency is going to be on full display, and you're going to have to do it again. But that's all I have to say on that subject.
Yeah, I'm interested. You mentioned obviously with Kamara being banged up, that hurts this offense a lot. Obviously, he is such a key focal point and means so much, even though obviously the touchdowns might not be there once again this season. But man, oh man, you rely on Alvin, obviously the running and receiving game.
Yeah, no, what I will say, so we're going to get a big dose of Jamal this week. I assume Kendre Miller told me he's going to play, even if he's still going to have to grit through that injury to some extent, but he's going to play. Yeah, we did hear from Jamal in the locker room this week, so let's listen to that really quick.
To be a physical back, because you're not the biggest dude in the world, but what does it take to be a physical back?
Just mindset, willingness to go in there, put your body on the line, and just don't be afraid. You know what I mean? So you just got to go in there with just a fearless mindset and just know your abilities.
Is that kind of what has rubbed off on you with these teammates? Do they kind of expect that out of you? I mean, when you get the ball, they kind of know what they're going to get to do. Who's going to put his foot in the ground and get up in there.
Yeah, that's the type of person I am. But yeah, I try to do more. But at the end of the day, it's all about just being physical, letting the teammates know, just how I run, just let them know I'm not gonna go in there light foot. I try to figure out a word, light footing it, but just go in there with all gas and just have fun in there while I'm doing it. So it was fun, honestly. I actually had, I think it was one of the players. I don't know who it was, but he asked me. He was like, "Why are you laughing?" Because I be laughing down there. And so I guess he never seen me laugh before, but I was in there laughing. He was like, "What are you laughing for?" I said, "To keep the pain away." But nah, it's just that fun. Like, this game is a physical one. Your body's going to feel at the end of the game, but why not just go 100% while you're in there? So,
did you feel stronger as it went?
Yeah. I just felt I'm just getting used to it. The more touches I get, the more familiar I get with the line, and then it's just us just talking to each other, communicating, and just seeing, I'm a different back than what AK is. So I just try to do my best to show them, physicality is here. I see the blocks. I'm just trying to make sure I make my line.
Yeah, and there's Jamal, right? We could just kind of mold this into the X Factor segment, because my X Factor is going to be not only Jamal and how he plays, it's going to be the approach you take with Jamal, because it has to be different than the approach you'd come at it with Alvin, right? I think you're going to do more inside zone. You're going to try to wear down that offensive or that defensive front a little bit more. You're going to run a lot of Taysom, right? Yeah, I think you're going to get a lot of QB power, but I think, one thing that's been difficult for Jamal this year is he's a guy who I think relies on some semblance of like rhythm.
Yes.
As he got more into that game last week, you can kind of just see the confidence growing, and the physicality kind of comes with that. And I think it's not a complicated thing. He's just got to hit the hole and go. And you need to see him falling forward. I don't need to see these 20, 30-yard runs, but I do need to see more consistent 4 to 5 yard runs on early downs. What drives me nuts is when you get Jamal in there, because like his game is supposed to be, worst case, you're talking 2-3 yards. You can't be getting TFLs in the Jamal Williams run game, because you shouldn't be dancing. You should, I think, as you put it, light footing around. You should just be getting downhill and running behind your pads and making life miserable on the Falcons defenders, who it's not an elite run front. You can run on that team. So to me, that's, it's not only I need Jamal to play well, and I think, he's in a better position to do that now than he was early in the season, just because there's a more understood plan. The offensive line is playing a little better, and he's hopefully back to full health, right? I also need to see the Saints call a game that suits him. Yeah, and that's been one of my criticisms, is I don't know if there's been a lot of creativity in terms of playing to guys' strengths in the run game specifically, outside of Alvin, because you already know how to use Alvin. And then they have thrown the ball to Alvin a lot. They have gotten Alvin the ball in ways that, were a little more creative than maybe you've seen the last couple years. But you're going to lose some of those pages of your playbook this week if he can't go. So how do you react to that? And I think that's kind of the X factor for me. If you can't run the ball, right? If you're just sitting back and having to throw it 40 times, I don't think you're going to win the game.
I'm right with you with Jamal Williams. That's why I was laughing when you played that clip. I was like, it's a perfect segue into the X factors. We haven't seen enough from Jamal this year. I'm hoping that, if Alvin does have to miss this game, they're ready to feed a pretty healthy diet of carries to Jamal. And man, we saw Alontae Taylor obviously get his first pick of his career last week. maybe we can get Jamal his first touchdown as a Saint this season, finally in the finale, and maybe we can, flip that perception of him into helping be a Falcon killer, which can only help going into next year, because I don't think Jamal Williams is going anywhere.
I don't know what you're talking about. If you look at Jamal, he's averaged 9 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons.
Right.
That's how math works. You can't argue with math.
No, you're right. There you go. You can, like we joked about earlier too. It's like you can change those statistics any way you want to work in your favor.
Yeah, 0 this year, 18 last year. That's the joke. But yeah, so it sure would be nice, right? And again, like we talked about this, it's like, or I think I talked about this yesterday. I don't know if we talked about it, but the frustrating thing is you brought Jamal in, and the idea was like, oh, he's a short yardage monster. Like you're going to get in these situations where it's 3rd and short, and there isn't going to be a question. You're just going to put Jamal in there, get the first down, and keep it moving. That hasn't been the case. Like you just haven't seen that. Even in situations where it could be. I think the opening drive against the Vikings in the second half, you had a chance to do that 3rd and 1, and you just got stoned at the line. And it's like that's the whole point of him being here, right? So I don't know. I hope maybe you can because it's a good way, especially against a team that doesn't score quickly, right? A team that wants to control the time of possession is to do that to them, is to extend drives. There's nothing more demoralizing for a defense than getting to 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, and just feeling like there's no way you can get off the field on that down, right? Like if you can't get them to 3rd and 3 or longer, they're just gonna, like, that's the Eagles, right? Like when the Eagles are playing well, that's what they're doing, is they're getting into 3rd and short, 4th and short, and you can't stop it. They're gonna run that friggin' tush push, and they're just gonna have Jalen Hurts just fucking spelunk his way through the line and get a first down. And like it's like basically it's an automatic first down. If you get to 3rd and 1, you might as well just start the next set of downs because you're not stopping it. And that's how I was hoping this kind of Jamal Williams tenure would go. And so maybe this is a chance for you to kind of start doing that. Going over the defensive side, what are you looking at? I mean, obviously you mentioned Alontae Taylor, but what are you looking at in terms of this matchup?
This one, obviously, from that first meeting, first off the bat, you got to stop the run game. You know what Atlanta's going to do, that they're not going to change it, who they are in this one. It's going to be Bijan, Algier, Patterson coming at you. And, man, that's a pretty lethal trio right there. But I'm going to go into, I want to see the pass rush also show up like they did last week. I was really impressed on how they were able to, throw Baker off his game. And it was like, holy crap, where have these guys been all season? That to me really stood out in Tampa Bay, and hopefully they're able to get after Heineke in this one and make him uncomfortable, because we know for sure that the Falcons are definitely adept at turning the ball over.
Yeah, I think handling the run is handling the running backs in general, and not just the run. Obviously, you need to be able to tackle and get off the field and not allow them to just run the ball down your throat. But one of the things that the Saints could not do in that game was cover Bijan out of the backfield either. Like that game was I wouldn't say you were in control of that game, but that game was going at least defensively in a way that you could stomach until that drive where they hit Bijan on the wheel and DeMario was in trail, and it was just a perfect throw from Desmond. And he had another, I think he had 2 touchdowns in that game if I recall correctly. Because there's another one where he just kind of knifed through the defense and Marcus May didn't do anything. And he just kind of waltzed into the end zone.
No, you're right. Yeah, he had the receiving and a rushing.
Yeah, and those 2 plays, it's like, you can run the ball. They're going to run the ball. They're going to get rushing yards. It's not like you're going to stop them from running the ball, but it's those big plays, those chunk plays from the running backs that you can't allow to happen. Because if they're going to run the ball 16 times, fine. I like my odds of eventually, we're going to win on a block, and you're going to get a TFL, and you're going to put them behind the chains. But it's like if they're getting those 20, 30 yard chunk play runs, then that's what really breaks your defense down. And Bijan, it's like he's that guy. Like he's it's funny because you look at Saquon Barkley and what you did to him was really impressive. And so, I think Bijan and Saquon are very similar, and they even both have the ons on there. But yeah, that's kind of my X factor is you need a better plan. You need to avoid, you can't let them just isolate DeMario in coverage against Bijan at will. But you are undermanned at linebacker, right? You don't have Nephi Sewell anymore. So how does that change things? I think maybe Monty Rice. Maybe this is a good game to see the Monty Rice debut. You brought him in. You clearly like him. He has not been active, but I hope that there is an alternative to forcing Zach Bond to play all these Sam snaps and limiting him in the pass rush. Like I want to see them. I don't really care if you want to put Zach at Sam, but that can't come at the expense of getting him involved in the pass rush when you have opportunities. So that's another thing, is how do you replace Nephi? Because Zach did play the Sam when Nephi went out. So like he doesn't know how to do that. So maybe that's the plan. Maybe you do put him in, because the base defense snaps are very different from the third and long. Like you're never running base defense on third and long. That's always dime or nickel. So it just means that Zach might be playing a much higher snap load than normal. So how does he handle that? But I agree. I think just the way you handle the running backs in a lot of different ways on defense is going to be a big factor in terms of whether you can get the result you want this time around.
I was going to ask you too, have you heard anything about the plan for Peyton Turner going into the finale?
He's practicing.
Right. I don't know, but he hasn't been activated, right?
He has not been activated, and you're getting close to that window. I'd have to double check in terms of, maybe I wouldn't be surprised if they do put him on the active roster and just have him ineligible, just in case you get to the playoffs and maybe. But I don't expect him to play this week.
Okay.
It's just like this is a pretty high leverage game to bring someone back in, but that would be the same case in the playoffs. I don't know. We'll see. He hasn't got a full practice in yet. He was limited. If he can get a full practice in on Thursday or before, if he can get a full practice in before this game, maybe. But yeah, I'm not going to sit here and waste any time trying to figure out whether Peyton can make an impact, because I mean, if he does, great.
It was just one of those things. I was hoping to see him. Obviously, Michael Thomas, Marshawn Lattimore are not going to be guys we see either in this finale.
No, I don't expect any of them to play. Nephi's out. Landon Young's not going to play. He could play if they get to the postseason. But I don't anticipate Peyton Turner playing. I don't think Alvin's going to play. When Kendre tells me that he's sure he's playing this week, even though he's still hurt, to me, I read that as because you need another running back.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Agreed.
And maybe Alvin bucks this and gets back and has some. Yeah, he's not going to be 100%. But maybe you can, even if he's a decoy, I think there's value there. So maybe they can get him out there. But you saw what happened with Michael Thomas, right? Like I don't like messing around with ankle injuries, and that's why a lot of people have been hard on Kendre for being out. Like, he's hurt. Like that's one thing that drives me nuts, is trashing players in general, but particularly young players, because they got hurt. It's like, yeah, they also would have liked to not get hurt. Like no one wants to be hurt.
Yeah, it's tough when you start, the perception is, oh, he's milking the injury, doesn't want to get on the field. I don't like that either.
Anyone who's ever sprained their ankle should understand what's going on here. Like, ankle injuries linger, and then they linger, and then they linger some more. And every time you think you're past it, you step on the sidewalk wrong, and all of a sudden you're right back where you are. And
exactly,
and replace that sidewalk with a 300-pound lineman, right? It's not as, it's frustrating. I'm frustrated because I like Kendre, and I think you've seen flashes from him. They're not going to give up on him, but that's the frustrating thing. And so, he's going to be out there, I assume, unless he has a setback, or, if Alvin does go, maybe that changes things for him. But I think even if Alvin did go, you would need that third running back, because you don't want to be caught in the same position with just Jamal and Adam Prentice. But yeah.
Yeah, and I know the team recently let go of John Trey Kirkland, so he's not coming up at all.
Yeah, I mean, they could bring him back, but he's a wide receiver.
He's not going anywhere.
He's a wide receiver. The other options on the practice squad are Jordan Mims and James Robinson.
Man, I even forgot they had James Robinson. Wow.
Yeah, so I think if Alvin can't go and you do have Kendre active, you probably do elevate one of those guys. I don't know whether it would be Jordan or James, but I think when you can't, because you see a guy go out there and he's playing through an injury, like the re-injury risk is obviously there. And so if he has to be shut down during the game, you want to have that extra running back. It's a little different than going into a game with 2 healthy guys and losing one. So that's my guess. But that's all I have. Anything else you want to hit before we get out of here?
No, man, just hoping to extend this season by miracle of miracles. I'll take it any way we can get in.
Yeah, this could be the last regular season pod. Think about that. It's kind of crazy, right?
Right.
Season is gone.
Just like that, football is ending.
Yeah, well, it's not ending, but it might be ending for the Saints.
Right.
Just a reminder, if anyone is still kind of confused, it's very simple. The Saints need to win, and to win the NFC South, they would also need the Panthers to beat the Bucs. If that doesn't happen and the Saints do win, then they would need, in the wild card matchups, they would need the Packers to lose to the Bears and the Seahawks to lose to the Cardinals. They need both of those results. And if that happens and the Saints win, they get in. The interesting thing, and Mike Triplett was talking about this, and it's if you're betting on one, the best odds you can get, and the one that feels like it's not that crazy, is the Falcons winning the NFC South, because they still can. And that would feel like so on brand for this division anyway, to have an 8-9 champion for 2 years in a row. And so like you can get like 6-1 odds on the Falcons winning. And really it's like, it should be pretty much a pick 'em in my opinion between the Saints and the Falcons. And they both only need the Panthers to beat the Bucs. So like if you're looking for a good odds bet, I'm not telling you to bet against the Saints, but if you want to, that's where the odds advantage is, because it's funny. Like the Saints really need the same thing. The Saints and the Falcons need the same thing. They each need to win and they need the Bucs to lose. But the Saints are going off at 3-1 and the Bucs are going off at 6-1 to win the NFC South. And the thing we haven't talked about is Baker Mayfield's dealing with a rib injury. Courtesy of Tyrann Mathieu.
Oh, darn.
Poor guy.
I know he said he's obviously going to do everything in his power to play, but
he's going to play. But
as we saw with, Derek Carr playing through an injury, sometimes that didn't obviously affect your performance. And hopefully that is the case.
Hopefully. Yeah. No, Baker's going to play. There is a 0% chance he doesn't play.
Agreed.
But, if you are of the believers that the Derek Carr's injury has affected him, I think it's especially rib injuries for a quarterback. You got to rotate.
Hopefully Brian Burns lands on him a little hard.
Don't say that. I don't like that. But yeah. Anyway, that's it.
Then what? Kyle Trask performs some miracle, and you're like, what?
Yeah, that would really twist the knife, as if the Panthers have like
exactly.
a 10-point lead. Kyle Trask comes in and leads this like epic comeback.
Right, I just hear this, like cheers in the Super, and all of a sudden Baker Mayfield's been knocked out of the Buccaneers game, and the fans are like, ah. Yeah. But meanwhile, Kyle Trask ends up going off against Carolina.
Hearing injuries is never cool. Yeah, and that's one other thing is like, I honestly don't even want to watch the score for the Panthers-Bucs game, because I don't care what the score is. The Panthers could be up by 15, and I would not it's like they're gonna blow this 100%. Like I will not feel safe. Like I don't even want to know, because I will not feel safe until that buzzer sounds.
Right.
So that is what it is. But all right, let's wrap this up. This is Inside Black and Gold. The dog is interrupting for the second time.
She says, "Take me out, Brew. You've been recording for so long."
Yeah, it has been a while. But thanks everyone for listening. Thanks everyone who's followed along all season. If this is the last regular season podcast, we're not going away, but it will feel like a different thing. So we'll find out. If not, we'll be going right on this same recording schedule as we have been for at least one more week. So we'll have to figure it out. But who dat? Go Saints. I'm Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. Be easy, y'all.
NFC South champs, here we come.
That's it. Peace.